Our hunters are bound and determined to absolutely annihilate the population of giraffes, I'm convinced. Siege weapons are mostly useless in modern versions of Dwarf Fortress. I'm not saying you can't use them. I'm not saying they don't necessarily work, but for the effort you have to put into them, they're just a nice embellishment. I would prefer to use more effective means. That's not to say that the siege weapon is never effective. It can certainly be a powerful tool in your arsenal, but depending on siege weapons for defense is, well, laughable. It's just not what it used to be in the old versions. Um, a siege weapon ballista will fire through goblins, and effectively you can use it to attack many goblins at once, but it will not... Rock thrown. Ah! Oh, yeah. I forgot. We made him a broker for his spare time, didn't we? Ha ha! Watch as I out-clever myself. This is a little like your mother coming after you and dragging you off by your ear. And now he's gone for a drink. And after that, he'll go eat. And then maybe by next year we'll get our trading done. Maybe. In the in this modern version of Dwarf Fortress, if you're looking for siege weapons, what you really want is a minecart shotgun. And our trader's on his way. There he is. This is what I mean right here. This right here is what I mean when I say bronze discs are worth a lot of money. Oh look, meat on 4 legs. Large items, such as what the humans often bring, are too large for dwarves to equip. And 3 discs gets the whole caravan. More or less. Most of the stuff that's less is things that I don't care about. Large gems really have no real function. Dye, flour, these are things that I can either make myself or don't care. Large, non-meltable items are basically useless except as trash. Blood barrels, unless I just want the barrel, there's no value in the blood. You can't do anything with it, so you can dump the blood and keep the barrel, but beyond that, that's about it. No, you can't make ponds or rivers out of blood. The barrels are not like buckets, unfortunately, so you can't dump the blood into a pond and call it your, moat. It'd be nice if you could, but no, not really. The best you can do is, some folks have reported you can apparently do something with the barrel and cause the blood to be left behind, effectively emptying the barrel of the blood and then using the barrel for other things like booze. Okay, and with our trading basically done now, let's go ahead and move those weapon bins back inside, and that's done. And now we'll get back to where we were before, which is our mine workers need stuff to do, our stone workers need something to do, and we got a couple of random folks who have nothing to do. Not really a pool, though, mostly just a puddle, right? A smear of ale. Basically, liquids removed from barrels are treated as contaminants. They're not actually flow like water is or magma is. Contaminants are basically just smears on the ground. If a dwarf or a goblin, for example, gets injured, their blood is a contaminant. It will land on the ground. There'll be a puddle or a pool or a smattering or whatever, but it can't actually accumulate to the level of depth. Notice that nervous tissue does rot, but doesn't actually produce miasma, at least not in the current version. So while the giraffe nervous tissue here is rotted, it won't actually hurt us in any way. It'll just basically sit there until I come back along and eliminate it, and that's what I'm doing now. I'm eliminating those things I don't care about. Nervous tissue, cartilage, things that don't have a particular function.
Sir, you can't do that there.
Notice the shift of our dwarves towards ecstatic as we go. More and more dwarves are moving into the high end of happiness and away from the low end. It's probably because our dining room is now grand. We had a mood earlier that was a stone crafting mood. Now, those of you with sharp eyes might have picked out that there was a donkey or a horse or something in our meeting area, in our hall there, that was starving to death quickly. We'll go ahead and get them assigned to the pasture, and then it's time to talk about grazers in earnest. So our mule foal here needs to be added to a pasture. Let's make sure everything is either on chains or pastured that I care about. Yep, we're good there. We've got to do something about that cat, and we've got to get that turkey assigned, and then we're in business. Okay, so let's go ahead and get our turkey assigned to the pasture here. And now let's talk grazers. You may have noticed that there's a distinct difference between the left pasture space and the right pasture space. Notice that big chunk of red area that's been eaten dry of all grass? That's what happens when large grazers get into an area and there's too many of them. They start depleting the grass too quickly for it to regrow effectively. What's basically happened is if I look at the zone here and I see what's actually assigned to it, I've got a bunch of water buffalo and yak cows and reindeer cows and yak calves and so forth, and all of those things are eating grass, and the larger grazers require a lot of grass in order to survive. So they need really big pasture spaces and low populations in order to deal with that, in order to deal with their need for food. In fact, in the current version of Dwarf Fortress, as it sits in vanilla, it's actually impossible to keep elephants alive. They require so much food that they actually starve to death even if they are sitting on grass the entire time. If they have to move at all, in other words, if the grass doesn't instantly regrow under their feet, they starve to death in the process of searching for food. So basically, you can't raise elephants for a meat industry like you could in earlier versions. Now, in order to counteract this massive overpopulation of grazers and get back to where this pasture was primarily reserved for my sheep, it's time to get on with the butchering. Bring on the blood. Ah, look, female cat. First priority.
Sorry, sir, I can't do it.
Splat, no more cat. Now, with our evil cat taken care of, we can deal with those butchered animals that we really wanted for meat, which is pretty much everything else. Be careful about designating too many animals for slaughter too quickly. Butchering is quick, tanning is not.
Yes, I'll do it, but no, it won't work. It won't work.
Additionally, all that meat has to be moved out of the butcher shop before it rots. Cats, I think cats provide leather. Yeah, anything that provides leather effectively provides a unit of leather, i.e. you can have cat leather armor, for example. Welcome to Dwarf Fortress, where you can make a floodgate out of the bones of a cat. At this point, we need to back off the processing of meat for a moment because our input stockpile, as you may have noticed, is rapidly filling up, and I suspect that we have a fair number of skins just laying around waiting to be tanned. Let's check on the contents of our butcher shop here, and I'll bet we've got a few skins waiting to be tanned that haven't been taken care of yet. And you'll notice we're starting to get a rather heavy accumulation of bone and such sitting in our... There's one skin there. There's another skin there. Yeah, so we've got 2 skins waiting. We probably need to start talking about, somebody to deal with all this animal byproduct stuff. So typically what I will do is take a hauler who doesn't have any other useful skills I care about. And in fact, we've already got one who has tanning as a skill. That's perfect. And we will go ahead and make him into what I call a bone worker. And my bone workers do a lot of other tasks, not just working with animals. They also do our cloth weaving and our strand extraction. I don't care about at the moment. They do our bone carving, our leather working, our weaving, and clothes making, as well as our butchery and tanning, and a few animal-related tasks that put them in the vicinity of animals on a regular basis. Our carpenter probably no longer needs to be both a brewer and a cheesemaker. That's a mistake we didn't correct from earlier. Those jobs are also done by haulers, so typically, he won't be spending much time doing these, but he will pretty much be the only tanner we have busy at any given moment. Now, having a couple of dedicated tanners is not a bad thing. I typically will have somebody specialized in bone working. I'll have a couple of them so that I can have a couple of people alternating in through the tanning job so that I don't waste skin as it gets produced. When we get to where we're mass butchering turkeys, we will probably have a much larger population of dwarves to handle the outflow of meat. For example, we won't bottleneck quite as hard as we're doing right now.
Sorry, sir, I can't do it.
It looks like we probably need to get a larger supply of rock pots built because our main food stockpile here has lots and lots of unbarreled items. So let's take a look and see who's busy creating the barrels and see if maybe we need some more of those people. Looks like we've only got 2, and most of those are also masons because that's the way I roll. So they're probably busy making tables and chairs. Let's take a look. Nope, this guy's making something like a rock pot or a nest box or a hive. But I've only got one guy really doing any of those tasks. Now, I have one legendary guy. Was in the crossbow squad. Well, guess what, sucker? You just got elevated out of the crossbow squad, that's for sure. Your legendary mood, remember? When he became a legendary worker, we forgot to pull him out, so now he's a stonecrafter. And I don't care that he's only going to work on stonecrafting. That's just fine by me. We are not yet making soap, but we have tallow, so let's go check. I think earlier on we built a soap maker's workshop, as I recall. Yes, we did. We will go ahead from the manager and queue up soap. I think we need lye, though, and we don't have any lye at the moment. We need to get some of that. Lye is made from logs, which is another reason why you're going to need trees, so using all your logs up for other things doesn't necessarily benefit you. You want to make sure that you're not doing, for example, everything on repeat. You want to keep some logs to make lye. You'll need logs for fuel, potentially. Since we need the lye for the soap, you get into that issue. Lye needs ash. I don't have any ash yet. There's where my mistake is. And I think we closed down all of our wood furnaces, so this is a good time to build an extra couple here just to deal with that occasional need for wood furnaces. And now that we have a military, our barracks should now be ready for work. Yes, it is. Good. Let's get that underway. Notice I mark all of the squads for training. That means that they will all use it. This has some consequences for archer squads, but we'll deal with that later. For now, I just want to make sure that at least the Smasher squad has training duty in here. When they're not doing other things, they will often come and train on their own. All we are doing here is saying, hey, if you're bored and you don't have anything else to do, you're allowed to train in this barracks. And if your duties require you to be on duty and you have nothing else to do, you're allowed to train in this barracks. If you turn off, for example, if I turned off the clods of whipping here, they would be able to train only in another barracks if they had one, or they wouldn't be able to train in a barracks at all. In this case, I want to make sure that all of my military dwarves are eligible for training, so they have to have an assigned barracks for training. Now, that's only the first part. Right now, their duties do not include training. They're not an active squad. They're effectively reservists that aren't on duty. So we need to come back over here to the military screen and go into the alerts menu. And we'll need to discuss alerts now for a moment. Right now, I have two alerts set up, inactive and active/training. These are the alerts that come by default with Dwarf Fortress. I will typically create another alert. And then I will basically denote that this one is used for training. This one is used for example, patrol duties that I want to have all the time. And this is used for some sort of emergency, invaders have shown up kind of problem. Now what I will do is I will set the schedule for one of these alerts. In this case, I will set it for the active/training alert. And I will set my smashers to train. Now, by default, all of these are all set to train 10 people. Initially, you run into an issue with dwarves who don't have military skill, becoming unhappy by being on duty, effectively training for long periods of time. So what I will typically do is edit this order, modify it so it doesn't use the entire squad all the time, but does use some substantial portion, like 4 dwarves out of 10. That will get me some of my dwarves training all the time, and then I'll hit Shift-Enter because I'm done. Now, notice that this one is 4, but this one here is still 10. It's hard to see here. I'm looking at the Smasher column, and I'm highlighting which row I'm in. But you'll notice that the top row is marked as the 4 I just set up, and the bottom row is 10. What you then do, once you've got one cell set the way you want it, is copy that order and paste it into all of those other slots. I can even paste it across multiple squads. Gimme. Now, I have multiple squads here, far more than are displayed on this menu, and you can tell because there's a plus-minus thing right up here, which is distorted a little bit by the Phoebus tile set, but this means I have additional squads that aren't on this screen. You can hit when you're in your schedule, you can actually tab between it, and bear with me for a second. I have to remember exactly how we do this here. Shift-Tab swaps between having the months go across versus having the squads go across. So, for example, this is the same display. The difference is whether it's columns and then rows, or rows and then columns. So, here's all of my squads with the months going across the top. Here are 3 of my squads with the months going down. That can, depending on how you want to see it, that's kind of where you want to be. By pressing the division on the numpad, the division and multiplier, I can change which alert I'm setting orders for. Right now, I'm tabbing between alerts. and the plus and minus keys are used to switch between columns. So let's go back to the squad view here, and then I can use the plus key to move my squads. Notice the top up there where the titles are changing. I'm switching between squads in the same alert. So we'll go back to active training for a minute, and I'll move over to where Smashes is at the beginning. Notice that it's 4 here. I'll copy that, and then I'll move with the plus key across to find one of the ones I haven't set yet, and I'll paste its orders in. Okay, at this point the active training alert is set for all squads to have 4 people training at all times. Now, all that does is say, I have a scheduled alert called active/training, and when it is active for a squad, 4 of them will go train in whatever barracks they're enabled to train in. It's not actually told them that they're on duty in that alert yet. So, I need to set the Smasher squad to be alerted to the active training level. So, bang! Now Smashers are now active. When I go back to my game and unpause, you're going to see such and so has, converted themselves into something else. Such and so has become a hammer dwarf. Such and so has become a hammer dwarf, and you'll see people start to show up in the barracks where they are now training. You'll see their jobs as well: wait for combat training, organized combat training, and so forth. That's really all there is to training. There are more efficient and less efficient ways to do it, but that's the basics of how to get squads to train for military squads that are melee based. Now we've got another migrant wave to deal with, so bear with me a second while I get all those folks squeezed into the hauler brigade. At this point we have 3 reasonably skilled, and in fact we have 2 very skilled farmers. Our kitchen worker probably doesn't need to be doing farming as well. Likewise, I'm going to turn off his brewing and just put him primarily doing nothing but cooking. He's going to be doing nothing but cranking out prepared meals. Let's bounce over and take a look at our stocks on that item just for right now. There are 326 prepared meals that one cook has managed to jam out. They are all roasts, meaning they all have 4 ingredients in each item. And, for example, this first roast would serve 12 dwarves, 1 meal. This second roast would serve 4 dwarves, 1 meal, and so forth and so on. You can basically determine right here that these roasts, if I pick one out at random, let's go look at this Dingo Tripe roast. Dingo Tripe is not particularly valuable, but this roast, consisting of a grand whopping 4 meals, is worth 736 dwarf bucks. A meal of roast, for example, here is a stack of 4 masterfully prepared Dingo Tripe roast with superior minced cat tallow, lots of superior minced cat tallow, some superior minced draft heart, and superior minced Dingo Tripe. These things all add up, and effectively a roast with valuable ingredients in it becomes not only worth a lot of money, but can make a dwarf much happier than otherwise. Well minced jaguar tallow and minced jaguar tallow, well prepared. At this point, this one cook is starting to crank out masterwork meals. You're going to start to see dwarves consuming them. I can actually move. I could theoretically move roasts off to the caravans when they arrive and get them sold. At this point, we have a full squad of crossbow dwarves. I haven't actually put them in a squad yet, but now's a good time to start talking about, well, let's go check on our butchering here. Let's make sure our meat stockpile is cleaned out a bit. Good, good, good. Let's get the butchering a little further along here, because we've got to get rid of these animals as we get new animals with the migrants coming in here. And since we now have kind of an overabundance of migrants for the moment who can handle our hauling duties, we'll go ahead and get some serious butchering done here. Let's make sure we've got somebody doing rock pots on repeat. That's a good idea.
No way.
Okay, and we've got some folks doing ash. Ash can be used for fertilizer as well, if I recall. Huh, not sure where the giant ibex hair crown came from.
I can't do it. I just can't.
Here we have two smashers who are training themselves, and one who is leading a demonstration for a second smasher. Notice that demonstrations are not as effective as actual combat drills, and combat drills are not as effective as sparring. The fastest way to train dwarves, the most efficient, effective way to train dwarves, is to get two dwarves who are the same skill with their weapon, put them both into a squad by themselves, so we have a squad of two dwarves, set them to train all the time. Basically, they will live together, work together, train together, and they will spend most of their time sparring, and they will go up at approximately the same skill rating. You'll get an occasional demonstration where one jumps to a 3 skill and the other's still at a 2, but the moment they both hit 3 again, bang, they're off in sparring. Toadie's got the sensitivity on sparring requiring equivalent skill set a little too tight. Frankly, I think a guy with a 4 skill should probably be able to spar with somebody who's between 6 and 4, or 6 and 3, but your mileage may vary. Right now it looks like, generally speaking, you're only going to get sparring when dwarves are equivalent skill. Let's talk about danger rooms. I don't really abuse danger rooms. You're not going to see me use them to convert my dwarves to superhuman dodgers, but one of the things I like to do is use a danger room with about 10 spears in it to convert my dwarves into moderately skilled dwarves, and then let them train up naturally from there. The speed of dwarves training is not like the speed of dwarves creating items. Remember, I made that kitchen worker not that long ago, a couple of seasons, and he's already a skill 9 cook. I didn't do anything other than just tell him to make meals on repeat, and hey look, he's already a skill 9. Whereas my smashers, who are, training right now, even if I trained all 10 of them, they're not going to progress at anywhere near that rate. These guys who've been training already are still only level 3 hammer dwarves. I'll come back in a season, they'll still be level 3 for the most part. What this does allow us to do, though, is I can temporarily set 10 dwarves on duty, stick them in a room, jab them with spears a few times, and hey presto, they all have at least a baseline level of skill with hammers. I'm not going to do it enough to actually make them into superhuman, military dwarves who can butcher entire goblin sieges by themselves, but it's worth noting that danger rooms can do that, so if you're really wanting to just get a military that can just slaughter its way across the map, well, you use a danger room to do that in about 10 seconds. I'll show you how to set one up, and then whether you use them or not, how you use them is up to you. I strongly recommend avoiding making them into your primary training area, because you will end up with a situation where your dwarves become superhuman overnight, and it takes all the challenge out of sieges and battles. What I'm doing here is I'm creating a danger room. Danger rooms are a borderline exploity thing, so whether you use them or not, you'll have to use your own discretion. They can, as I've said previously and will say again, they can break the challenge of the game. If you use them, I strongly recommend doing what I'm doing and using them very sparingly, solely to bypass the initial pain of trying to get a base dwarf even a single point of a skill, so he stops getting pissed every time you draft him into the military. Okay, we'll set the Smashers up to train in this barracks right now. I'll set, but I won't actually get the danger room. Actually, I need to turn this off temporarily. Won't get the danger room ready just yet. Before you use a danger room, you have to have all of your dwarves armored completely, head to toe, full armor, all of them. Don't miss a spot. Even training spears can be dangerous on unarmored dwarves. Needless to say, building all of that armor and those weapons for the next few squads is going to take a lot of iron. That's okay, we've got a lot of iron on the map. No, a cloak is not enough. It will sometimes be enough because it covers all their parts. A cloak counts as armor across arms, legs, body, head, and so forth and so on. But it's not guaranteed to actually stop a hit. And the problem you can run into is you can still get dwarves that get speared. Keep in mind, they call them danger rooms for a reason. So if you folks are looking at this and going, oh well, he's just going to grind out masterwork skill on his dwarves in 10 seconds, you can once you get them fully armored. But there's still an element of risk if you're anything less than absolutely prepared and equipped and so forth and so on. In particular, female dwarves who give birth in a danger room are going to have some hilarious consequences. And yes, most dwarves will survive, but I generally treat my startup ants as valuable until they prove otherwise. Here's one of those annoying things where you're having to fight against the interface. Dwarves will continue to cancel the jobs because there's damp stone, which is a safety mechanism, but I know there's damp stone and I don't care.
No.
Notice that I am using training spears and not menacing spikes. Training spears. This upright spear trap will eventually become the core of our danger room. Effectively, you move the dwarves in, link a lever up to it, and start firing the spikes off. Because the dwarves have armor and shields and weapons, they will parry, block, and take hits on their armor, and thereby improve their skills. It takes very little materials to get a danger room up and running. This is because they're fairly easy to build, because they are relatively safe if you're prepared for it, and because they can raise your dwarves to super duper legendary skill if you overuse them. Danger rooms have something of a mixed reputation in the Dwarf Fortress community. I'm going to show you how they're used, so you've seen them once. Whether you use them or not, you'll decide for yourself. One of the reasons I use them is that dwarves who don't have a military skill, who are invited to become military dwarves, take a fairly significant negative thought for being drafted. And the problem is that, oftentimes you don't want your dwarves training year-round, because then they get pissed that they're training all the time and they don't get any time off. So what you try to do is you set it up so that your dwarves go in and out of training. The problem is they re-get the drafting negative thought every time they become an active duty member, until such time as they gain enough skill to have at least a level 1 in one or more weapons. So if you take a completely unskilled military dwarf, and you constantly move him in and out of the military as part of his training schedule, because you can't control which dwarves go on duty or off duty, as he moves in and out all the time, he's constantly getting hit with that negative thought for being drafted. Additionally, when a dwarf in the military leaves the military and becomes a civilian again, if he doesn't have at least one civilian skill at level 1, then he gets pissed that he was removed from the military. So then you end up with a situation where dwarves are getting pissed because they're being put in, pissed because they're being taken out, pissed because they're being trained all the time, and basically it just drags your happiness through the floor for no good reason. Whereas if you stick them in a danger room, pull a lever, once or twice, suddenly they've got a level 1 skill in military, and you can keep them in training more or less all the time as long as you offset the long patrol duty problem. Whether that's intended or not, you kind of have to make up your own mind. I will be covering patrol routes and schedules we've already touched. That training schedule where I was moving the same order to each aspect is a schedule. It's the same thing in every month, but I've set up a schedule where my dwarves are not constantly training, for example. What exactly about scheduling did you want to see that I haven't covered? Yeah, because I want to buy a cedar splint for 1,000 dwarf bucks. Basically, if you want to switch between different tasks in your schedule, you basically just either, depending on whether you want to do it manually or not, you just create a separate order for each one, and then allow them to switch as the months change. So, for example, in the first month I might have them doing training, and on the second month I might have them doing patrol, and the third month I might have them off duty, and basically I just set that month to be that order, and I set up one order for each month. Additionally, someone mentioned earlier, and I don't think I mentioned it, and I don't know that I've ever actually used it, but it should, theoretically, be possible to change the schedule such that, for example, I can add an order to this guy for a different order here. Let's see. A patrol route, and we'll say, in addition to that, I want to have 2 guys on patrol routes, and so bang, then I should have someone told me it's possible to have multiple orders for a single squad, even within a single month, so you could effectively have a third of your squad training, a third of your squad on patrol duty, and a third of your squad off duty in the same month. Not exactly sure how to do that off the top of my head. We'll have to remember to ask somebody about that. Apparently, it's supposed to be possible. Basically, let's say I wanted to have. Let's go look at the clouds of whipping here for just a minute. Let's say I wanted to have them, train sometimes and be on patrol duty. Others, if you're doing that by month, you can effectively have them training in this month, and then I could go ahead and edit this order and say, oh, well, I don't want them to train. I want them to defend a burrow, and you can modify their order by hitting edit. At least in theory. Oh, I have to cancel the existing order. That's why. Actually, I'm kind of curious if that's because I don't have any dwarves assigned to that squad, whether it will let me properly assign them differently or not. I don't have any burrows, for example. Yeah, I know Shift Enter is the confirm, but say for example I go in here and I hit O to edit this order, or hit E to edit this order, excuse me. So now I'm in here modifying the order, and I say, okay, great, I want to have, station, for example, and I want to have 2 dwarves do it. If I hit Shift Enter, it just says, okay, great, you still got no scheduled order. I'm going to have to remember, I'm going to have to go look at my notes on this one. Typically, I don't mess around with complex orders. I simply use train on the things I'm going to do and assign that for pretty much everything. If I'm going to have somebody defend a burrow, I set the burrow up and I set them up to defend that and just that. And I set that up by handling separate alerts. So, for example, if I wanted to have the Smashers defend a burrow, I would come in here and set up under active that I wanted them to do a patrol route between nodes, or I wanted to do a defense on a burrow in here. And so then I'm either training them and they're on the training alert, or they're on the active duty alert and they're on their patrol, or they're on red alert and they're moving to the front gate, for example. See, you should be able to do multiple orders here, but say, for example, on the Smashes, I've got them set to do, I'm tabbing between schedule list and order list, and the only thing that's listed there is train. It's not letting me do an addition.